or less.
Internally say the name and think it.
Because even if that was at one point how it was pronounced, it certainly isn't anymore.
There was a moment of silence after she said, yeah, there was a moment.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing some of this money. Well, here's hoping we have positive Teams meetings today that work out.
Testing that different times.
Yeah. A few seconds here. 10 o'clock, we have a quorum. I'll call the Electoral Area Committee meeting of May the 8th, 2024 to order. Chair acknowledges we're located on the traditional territory of the Lasquatach people, and the first item of business will be the adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Next item is a delegation on covenant discharge from Mr. Michael Stanky of Electoral Area C, Quadra Islands. So, Mr. Stanky, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation to the board. Afterwards, the directors will have an opportunity to ask questions if they wish. It's not a debate, but you're welcome to begin. Thank you.
Am I talking loud enough, Gerald? Mr. Chairman?
I can hear you.
Okay. The goal of my presentation is to urge the directors to not proceed with releasing the restrictive covenants at Upshur Road and Canish Bay on Quadra Island. Those are items K, 2, and 3 on today's agenda. I trust all of us here appreciate the importance of density averaging. It is important for controlling development, reducing sprawl, creating and maintaining open spaces, and for monitoring and the carrying capacity of our island. We have a limited transportation system, no rivers, and decreasing rainwater. It's great to think that we're all back to the land individualists in the great outdoors. The truth is, we are an island facing increasing development pressures and decreasing natural amenities. Covenants play an important role. The covenants are held by the board, but really they're held by the board for the benefit of Quadra and Quadra Island use. This is a land use issue. One of the main and important controls enjoyed by rural areas is that land use decisions are the purview of our regional directors. I suggest that the board should not have a vote on this issue. A public information meeting is the final requirement for moving forward with the covenant's discharge issue. The meeting, held on April 22nd at dinner time on a work day, was attended by about 30 people. In my opinion, the meeting was a sham, just a means for ticking the final requirement. I won't tell the whole story, just some highlights. When asked why the covenants are being released, Director Mawhinney stated that they are 10 years old, out of date, and need to be removed. This gave the impression that the covenants are time limited. I want to emphasize the importance of this issue. I will rephrase the answer. This is a proposal to release contract obligations, specifically no further density restrictive covenants which remain in perpetuity with the land and which were negotiated for the development of two separate 17-lot density averaged subdivisions. The reason given for discharging the covenants is because they are 10 years old and need to be removed. The 10-year statement was confusing and a lot of time was wasted on brainstorming how covenants could be made ironclad with no time limits so they could not be discharged. It sounds like what we've got. The chairperson did not correct the misconception. Our Quadra OCP is this year scheduled for review. When asked if releasing the covenants could be postponed until that review, at which time more people would have input, the answer was The OCP process will take a year, and this issue is way behind schedule. My question, what is the schedule for covenants with no expiry date? Another point raised, people are concerned about removing the restrictive covenants because of precedent it may set in the future of zoning applications and, of course, for other properties holding restrictive covenants, of which John speculated there could be 12 or more. When there's a land use or rezoning application, the planners often say that the outcome won't set a precedent, but of course it does. Exceptions for restrictive covenants is a very slippery slope and a terrible precedent. A question asked, how will this issue be decided? Director Mawini's answer, on May 15, I will make a motion at the board meeting and they will vote on it and the issue will be resolved. That's how it works, right, John? John, yes, it goes to the board and is voted on and we see what we get. John later provided additional information. There's no requirement for a public hearing. The board members will receive an information package containing background information, written submissions, and the Quadra Island Advisory Planning Commission will be consulted and asked to review and consider background information pertaining to the covenant. That all information will also be included. Actually, on April 4th, 2.5 weeks prior to the information meeting, the Quadra Advisory Planning Commission, whose commissioners were appointed to represent a broad spectrum of our community, met on this very issue. All 9 commissioners were present. After review and consideration, including maps and background information, the APC commissioners voted on 3 motions. Motion 1, that the covenant discharge request for 1520 Upshur Road, Kwathiowski Cove, be supported. The motion was defeated 7-2. Motion number 2, that the covenant discharge request for 731 Canish View Drive, Harriet Bay, BC, be supported. The motion was defeated 7-2. Motion 3, that the Electoral Planning Commission supports maintaining the covenants for 1520 Upshur Road and Canish View Drive as legal agreements freely entered into by the regional district and the landowners, recognizing that maintaining the covenant causes less land to be available than would otherwise be the case. The motion carried. A January 10th, 2024 staff report compiled by Onico for the February East meeting summarizes the Ministry of Transportation's refusal to support further density and their refusal to discharge a restrictive covenant for Canish View Drive. That's only 4 months ago. Approximately since I started writing this, there have been more submissions, but approximately 28 written submissions have so far been received by Director Mawini and by the Planning Department on the issue of releasing the covenants. 25 submissions oppose releasing the covenants, 2 support the plan, 1 is non-committal. Ministry of Transportation and the approving agency does not support releasing the restrictive covenants. Our community, represented by the APC, does not support release of the covenants. 90% of Quadra residents who submitted comments do not support the release of the covenants. There is not community and there is not government support for the directors to release these covenants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanky. Any questions from directors? Seeing none, thank you very much. Or Dr. Mooney, do
Just, may I make a comment to Director, or to?
you have a
Mr.
question?
Not really.
Okay, no, we don't want to debate.
No, okay. Okay.
You can speak to the matter as the agenda comes up.
No problem, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Stanky.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
And next item of business is the adoption of the previous minutes. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We should have a motion to receive Mr. Stanky's presentation.
Move to receive the presentation?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. All right, number F, adoption of previous minutes. Motion, please.
Move adoption of the April 10th minutes of the regular meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, no public considerations, notice of motion or chair's reports. Next, staff reports. Development permit application DP 1A24 Adams for receipt.
Move receipt.
Oh, second.
Thank you.
I believe John will speak to this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An industrial development permit has been received to guide the form and character of a proposed welding shop at 7990 Island Highway, which is the Campbell River Marine Terminal property. The construction of this facility will allow centralized welding activities within an enclosed space at the Menzies Bay site to service existing businesses on the property. Although the use is permitted and would be carried out in accordance with the existing zoning regulations, prior to development, the issuance of an industrial development permit to regulate the facility's form and character is required. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of receipt? That's carried. A motion, please. Director Mooney, do you have a motion for this? Please do.
I would move that the committee recommend that development permit DP 1A24 Adams as attached to the staff report dated May 8th, 2024 be approved, and that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to issue the development permit.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Director Rice. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Number 2, release of covenant Canish View Drive, Quadra Islands for receipt.
Move receipt of the report.
Second.
Second by Director Rice. Discussion? Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few comments on the report itself, and I was just going to state that for the record, it's interesting how there can be different perspectives on the same community meeting, because hearing from Mr. Stunke was an interesting perspective that I find quite fascinating. So, like an application for an official community amendment, these covenant discharge applications went to the community for feedback at the public meeting and through receipt of many letters. And we did hold a public meeting to provide answers to questions and also to accept written submissions. I wasn't there to provide opinions, only to answer questions and hear the thoughts of other community members. A covenant is defined as a formal, solemn, and binding agreement, and overwhelming the message that I have received from Islanders is that covenants are promises to the community, lasting promises which must continue to be respected. These properties came with the covenants attached to the title. The purchasers of these properties knew that they existed. And while the idea of adding one lot to island inventory isn't necessarily bad, discharging covenants was seen by many as opening the door to more such future applications and a lessening of the formal binding nature which covenants are meant to hold. So as a result, pending further conversation, I would like to move option B.
Second.
Could you read option B, please?
I could.
Oh, we're still on receipt, but
Yes.
we move it forward.
Well, I wasn't sure if anyone else had any other comments.
Yeah, any further comments by anyone? Seeing none, then on receipt, all those in favor? That's carried. And Director Mooney, you have a motion?
Yes, please. I would like to move that the committee recommends the board not authorize the chair and corporate officer to execute the discharge of covenant EL 4705.
Second.
And I have a subsequent motion, Chair, once we're
We'll do this
dispensed
one
with the
first.
vote.
Any
Yeah.
discussion on Director Mooney's motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. And your subsequent?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that the report to the board include the Advisory Planning Commission report and further correspondence received after the publication of this report. I personally have received probably 5 or 6 letters since this report was published, and it would be great to be able to include more of the correspondence.
Let's get a seconder.
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I think I accidentally already did my further discussion, sorry.
All right, your mic's still on. All those in favor? That is carried. Number 3, release covenant Upshur Road, Quadra Island for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion? Director Mooney?
Thank you. As with the previous application, while adding one lot is not necessarily a negative, deleting covenants is broadly perceived by the community as negative. And I did want to point out that both covenant discharge applications went to the Area C Advisory Planning Commissions, and neither application were supported by the APC. And I'm not sure why, but the Advisory Planning Commission report or the results of their meeting were not included in these reports, which I thought would maybe have been helpful. So, yeah. And I'm going to move option B when it gets to be time, and I will have a subsequent as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Seeing none on receipt, all those in favor? And that's carried. And a motion, Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that the committee recommend that the board not authorize the chair and corporate officer to execute the discharge of covenant FB 092361.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. And your subsequent?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that the report to the board include the Advisory Planning Commission report and further correspondence received after publication of the initial report.
Second.
Second by Director Rice. Discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Item number 4, Cortez Island open burning restrictions for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion?
Just that, Mr. Chair, that we've added the amendments suggested by the area director, and the bylaw, should the committee support it, is ready to go.
Thank you.
I do have some comments and some
Director
motions.
Vanesh?
Thank you, Chair. Really appreciate staff getting us this far. I would love to get this passed today, but there are some further amendments I would like to make based on some further understandings that I have, and just creating more clarity within the bylaw. So I do have some motions for that, which I believe Edith has. Thank you, Edith. So the first is
We're still on receipt.
yeah, thank you.
Anything further on receipt? All those in favor? Receipt's carried. Motion, Director Vanesh?
So the first adjustment I'd like to see is the definition of barbecue, just being a bit more specific there and making sure that we're not including wood barbecues and that's just for gas and briquettes. So I'd like to move that the definition of barbecue be changed to barbecue means a CSA rated or ULC rated cooking stove that uses gas, propane, or briquettes for the purpose of cooking food.
I can second that. We get to the discussion part after that, right?
Yeah, do we have a seconder on this?
Me.
You seconded it?
Yep.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
No, I was just curious.
Okay.
I
all
guess
those
I'm
in
just
favor?
curious,
Oh,
what
go ahead.
was the bylaw looking like it was maybe going to permit wood-fired barbecues? Was the concern?
Yeah, the original definition read that barbecue means a container or appliance within which a fire is used for the purpose of cooking food. So it could be a wood fire in a barbecue, and that's I don't want to provide more clarity that it's actually just for gas and briquettes.
Thank you.
Okie dokie, all those in favor? And that's carried. Anything further, Director Vanesh?
Yeah, I have two other motions. The next one is to Section 5. This is further understanding from the BC Fire Commissioner, and one of the issues that this board has contemplated, or this committee and the SRD board has contemplated, is the issue of delegation of authority to enter people's properties. My research has shown that the BC Fire Commission can actually provide this authority. So it's not something that the SRG has to provide, but it can be given through the BC Fire Commission. And there are examples multiple examples of this around the province. So I'd like to move.
Okay, go ahead and make your motion.
I'd like to move that Section 5, which is the authority to extinguish open fire, be changed to, in the event an open fire is found to exist in contravention of this bylaw, the fire chief may, in addition to any other remedies prescribed by this bylaw, utilize such resources as may be available to extinguish the fire to prevent the reignition of that fire.
Second.
So,
Just for clarity, so to set expectations, we will have to review this with legal counsel to make sure we can actually do this.
okay,
Yeah,
will this come back to electoral areas? So it'll come back to electoral areas, Director Vinesh, and we can look at it again.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Dave. I understand it. You'll have to have that conversation. And this really sort of, the big question on this is like, let's say there's a fire, but somewhat, the fire ban's on and a tourist lights a fire on a beach. Technically through this bylaw, we would have to go back to Campbell River and have the manager in Campbell River deal with it rather than the fire chief. And, with a 4-hour round trip and 2 hours to get there, it's not, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And that, it makes much more sense that the fire chief or their designate take care of it.
Okay, anything further on the motion? All those in favor? That's carried. Anything further, Director Vinesh?
Yeah, one more motion. This is to Section 6, similar issue around the
Okay,
delegation of
Director
authority.
Vinesh, if I just interrupt for a second, the proper procedure would be make the motion, we'll get a seconder, and then you can speak to it.
Yeah. So I'd move that to Section 6, the inspection of property authorized be changed to the fire chief is hereby authorized by authority from the BC Fire Commissioner to enter upon property at all reasonable times and without prior notice, with or without representatives of the regional district, where considered necessary to determine whether the provisions of this bylaw are contravened.
Second.
All right? You can speak to it, Director Vinesh?
Yeah, I think, similar to the previous motion, I think staff are going to have to go back and have that conversation and then bring it back to the next EASC meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Anything further? All those in favor? That's carried. Number 5, open burning regulations, electoral area D for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion?
I don't know if Sean or Tom want to speak to this. Or...
I believe that Sean Koopman is available. If he would like me to jump in at any time, he can wave me down.
Through the chair to the east. Second follow-up report on this, essential summary. If you would like us to look into an open burning bylaw regulation for Area D, it would only be for the portion that's currently in the Campbell River Fire Service area, as the Forbes Landing to Strathcona Park area is not in a fire protection area, and the Black Creek Oyster Bay Fire Protection Area is already governed by CVRD.
Anything further? On receipt, then, all those in favor? That's carried. Recommendation, motion, Director Rice?
Yes, I'd like to move option B, that no further action be taken with respects to the matter of the open burning regulation within electoral area D at this time.
Second.
Discussion? Director Rice?
Thank you, Chair. The reason why I don't feel that we can move forward on it right now is that there's a fair amount of questions. For example, I don't quite understand how or what would be the impacts of changing the letters of patent from 1977 to a regional district service. That is quite concerning. I also didn't contemplate that there would be a rising cost of fire protection, so that is a huge issue. The other thing that I think is quite important is because of Area D's location, it is important to have bylaws that are consistent throughout the entire electoral area. So having a bylaw that only affects a portion of Area D doesn't seem to work real well. I'm also concerned that currently under the fire service agreement that we have with the city of Campbell River, they don't respond to calls unless it's a building burning. So smoke calls, they will not respond to those, and we actually have to then go to the province to get any action on that. So again, I think until the Comox Valley takes a look at this and perhaps maybe update their bylaws, it's not something that we can easily do for Area D. So that's why I'm moving option B.
Okay, on the motion, anything further? All those in favor? That's carried. Number 6, electoral air noise control bylaw for receipt.
I'll move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor of receipt? That's carried. And the motion, please.
I would like to move that the committee recommend that the proposed amendment bylaw for the electoral area noise control regulations be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Number 7, Quadra Island Solid Waste Curbside Collection Study for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
And I believe Sheena will speak to this.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. This is one of 2 Area C solid waste reports that are on our agenda today, and I'm glad that they've gone together because I think they tell a bigger story about the lack of services for waste disposal that exist currently in Area C. So for Quadra Island, there is currently solid waste collection through private contractors on the island. So we took the approach of just trying to get some costing to provide a service administered through the SRD with those existing contractors. Unfortunately, the interviews that our consultant did with the contractors who were anonymously interviewed to get a more wholesome and transparent explanation of their service availability, identified that there are no contractors who are both capable and willing of servicing the entire island. One of the large constraints for several of the contractors was the amount of homes on gravel roads and the amount of time that it takes to service an island if they're based on Vancouver Island instead of on Quadra. So in light of that, we don't have any cost to provide to you for what it would cost to have a contractor administered service. We do have some really high level costs of what it might cost for us to purchase some equipment to do an SRD led service. This option would be quite costly, likely exceeding the similar services that we offer in the Sayward Valley and on Cortez Island. We could also contemplate putting out a request for proposals to further test the free market to see if there are, in fact, haulers that have reconsidered their position or that perhaps weren't interviewed by our consultants. We did speak to the Wee Kai, who currently use Waste Management for their waste collection options for the Cape Mudge Village and some of the nation-owned businesses on the island. They have sort of similar feedback to the services offered by Waste Management as the residents of Quadra. They're not fully satisfied with what they're able to get there, and they have engaged in a feasibility study to purchase a collection vehicle to provide services to their nation. This is still in the very early phases, I would say. I don't want to speak on behalf of the nation, but they're contemplating it. So there may be an opportunity to have them as a collection contractor or explore other opportunities for partnership with them. The other option that I think might have a bearing on this is should a waste transfer station be developed on Quadra that would improve the market for collection contractors, as well as it would provide a convenient disposal option for residents who may prefer to not have an SRD administered service and may want to self-haul. Well, there are a bunch of ways that we could format a service. The existing services in Sayward Valley and Quadra Island do require mandatory participation for all of the eligible dwellings within the service area. So I think that's an important consideration for the directors regarding the impacts to the residents on Quadra. So I'm happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
Thank you. Anything further? Director Winnie?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report. And it's really interesting to hear you say that Area C is underserved, because it does kind of feel like that. Some of the findings in the report I would perhaps categorize as already known to the community, such as the lack of interest in haulers and the lack of interest in servicing gravel roads, as that has been the lived experience of islanders. Exploring options for a Quadra Island transfer station with CSWM is one of the motions highlighted in the executive summary. However, the report is light on details regarding if this has been explored. I'm curious if engineering staff could provide their perspective on a potential timeline and/or the likelihood of a waste transfer station on Quadra Island and summarize any of those conversations to date.
Yeah, so the waste transfer station would need to be administered by the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Services. They have the letters patent or the jurisdiction to do that. So I cannot speak for their organization or their process, but we are in the midst of updating their 10-year solid waste management plan, which I think is a timely opportunity to advocate for these types of additional services and ideally get them captured in that report that will be voted on by the board at CSWM. So I believe the directors around this table have the opportunity to raise the issue in that arena as well. Again, I really can't speak to it. I do know that there are regulations and permit requirements to set up a waste transfer station, so it's not so much as simple as just rolling in some dumpsters and scheduling a pickup. We have already sent, the board has already sent a letter to the CVRD requesting a waste transfer station on Quadra, so this is not going to be the first time they've heard it from us, should that be the option that is selected today. And we could engage in further discussions with that, perhaps.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, just to give some maybe historical perspective, I don't seem to recall whether it was advocated for or of an interest for Quadra in past years of having a transfer station there. I just don't know. I can't remember. It's, I think, a huge challenge for waste collection because of the size of Quadra. And these haulers is that you're not going to do the whole route with one truck, right? And then you need to dump this and they need to come over. And so I think a transfer station is a critical component to having waste collection, even on Cortez, where there is, let's say, a smaller independent collector. There's a transfer station. I'm assuming their trucks are smaller. They need to be dumped more often and you can't leave the island. So that part is, I think, really important as an aspect of anything else we need to move forward with. And it puzzles me as to why the solid waste function doesn't have one there or isn't pursuing that, considering the other areas that have transfer stations and considering it's an island and considering that how much more costly it is. So they don't do waste collection in the solid waste function. And just looking practically at Quadra, knowing there's a ferry there, knowing the amount of homes, you're not going to get that with one or two trucks. You're going to have to get off island, dump, go back, which makes the cost really expensive. So I think what we've tried to introduce here is a number of options. We knew we put stuff in here that you'd already known, just to bring clarity and transparency to it. But I think there are probably a number of options you can engage. And one of them is the waste transfer station. I think it's not singly the only thing you have to pursue, but it's sure in any option helpful for sure. And I think we can pursue that in parallel of doing other things for waste collection, because I don't think it's going to get any better if you look to practically how the current private hauler does it, right? It's, there's no real regulation or we can't hold them to anything. It's a private business. So whether it's ad hoc or what they charge or how they do it's just completely out of our hands, right? So I think there are other options available for us for sure. And at the same time, that transfer station is, I think, critically important if waste collection is desired by the island.
Thank you for all of that clarification from everybody, from both of you. I noticed that the consultant's report talked about assessing community interest as the next step, but it doesn't really seem to me at this point like there is enough information to bring and something to the community, because there isn't really a rough estimate on costs or any specific solutions that have been identified. So, and there's 4 options as presented as alternatives. And I'm just kind of feeling like most of them are good. So do we only have to pick one?
No, you can, no, and that was kind of, I was trying to lead you there. You can pick all 4, because I think all 4, there's benefits to each one of them. And you're right, it's too early, let's say, to bring it to the community. But if we pursued, let's say, a similar model to Cortez, I think that's what we would try and encourage. And if we got something back, then we could go, okay, this is a tangible amount based on the infrastructure that's here, no transportation. This is, folks, this is what it's going to cost. So there's some benefit there. Internally, I think B is a pretty easy one for us to do as well. I'm not saying that would rise to the top, but it's not that difficult. And, produce a number. I think pursuing a partnership with the Weebakai, certainly we have mutual interest. They have the same challenges we do. And D, I think, is also important that at some point, I just think you're going to need a transfer station over there if cost is important.
Cost is always important. So one of the other things that the consultant report highlighted is that there were enterprises that were interested that do not currently offer the service to Quadra Island, but they provide the service to other islands. So does that mean that there's a potentiality, like anonymity included, that something would be going from Quadra to Cortez's transfer station and then back to Campbell
I
River?
doubt that, yeah. No.
So the hauler that I believe that they were referencing there is not the one on Cortez.
Okay.
And they would have been in the category, both the ones on Cortez would have been in the category as not capable due to constraints in vehicles and the likes of that. Not necessarily not willing, but not capable under their current capacity and service
Okay.
delivery model.
And I guess that's my question, because option A, where it's asking about, it's suggesting that we do a request for proposals. In the consultant's report, it kind of highlights that there's going to be support needed to build capacity, to provide the solid waste services, and to get those detailed capital and operating costs required. So it seems like if the report is identifying that anybody that could potentially provide that service needs support to provide it, is going out to an RFP necessarily going to provide the answers without maybe our staff doing a little bit more legwork first or working collaboratively? I'm not sure how we could phrase that.
No, I think so. I think the intent of this is, if we're focusing on not the large haulers, because I think we found level water with them. They're providing what they are interested in, willing to do, etc. So I think A really looks at a potential business opportunity. So we float out an RFP out there and saying, look, these are the parameters that we need. If you went from scratch, let's say, and I know Highways does this with Highways maintenance, and you start from scratch and you need to collect and then you need to dispose, and we give you all the parameters you need. You can provide us, if you're willing, if someone has an interest out there, of what that would look like financially. And then we'd have something to take back to the community and say, okay, this is what somebody will create, hopefully a business out of, and it's going to cost this. Is there interest in this? And then if we furthered that with, let's say, a partnership with the Weebakai, that would, I think there's continuing economy of scale, and then work towards a transfer station would help claw some of that back. Like, let's be fair, on Cortez, if there wasn't a transfer station, the waste collection costs would be much higher, right? So I think that's going to be something that, obviously, if we did waste collection tomorrow, there isn't a transfer station, it's going to be cost A, and we'd have some target to work towards. But we could put out parameters for, if we required you to do this, knowing that somebody out there may have interest but zero equipment, what would that cost? And then we'd have something to go to the community and say, okay, it's based on this size, this area, it would be this much money. Is there an interest in that? And then, in my mind, at the end of the day, you'd have two things. One, a significant commercial hauler saying, this is the cost and this is the service you're going to get as you're getting it today. And if we went independent, this is what it is and this is what you get. And if you don't like either one of those, waste collection is out of the question, right? And at the same time, concurrently, just continue, I think, to pursue a transfer station. I just don't know how long-term, you can afford to do waste collection management without the costs are just so much higher.
I agree. And I do have another question, but I see that Director Vanesh does, so I will let him ask a question.
Director Vanesh?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the CAO. We need to get a transfer station on Quadra Island, and I'm certainly willing to work with Director Mahoney and other directors at the SRD to advocate that at CSWM. That seems to be the key for whatever solution we provide. For some background info on Cortez, even with losing the Recycling BC incentive, we're looking at around $130 per household that pays it, which is, I think very affordable and certainly a stark contrast to what's being offered by the mainstream providers on Quadra right now. I'm wondering, as far as the small scale on island business opportunity, which I really like. I really like the Wewakai partnership as well. But is there a way for example, that Quadra Island could use some of their economic development funding to purchase a truck or two and then lease that to the small business? Is there a way that we can sort of incentivize business opportunity on Quadra to be able to handle this? That's a question, I guess, for the CAO.
Maybe. I mean, local government can't provide, financial assistance to private business. There has to be, a benefit to the community. So, maybe in some kind of partnership, Cortez Fire, I mean, we buy the capital equipment there, we retain, there could be some way of doing it. It would have to be some kind of partnership with us. But there's all kinds of creative ways. I think what I'm most hopeful for is there would be some interest from somebody on island to create a business. I think if there's the will, we'll find a way. Yeah. But you need to, hopefully there's somebody that might have an interest.
Did you have a further question, Director Mooney?
I do. Thank you, Chair. I just have one more question, and that's if we were to do a request for proposal calls that ask for the cost of this project for somebody to provide that, that's quite a project in creating that information. And then we're also talking about a potential Wewakai partnership, which would maybe then negate somebody's request for proposals that they've put together. So, or am I seeing that correctly? Or
no, I think you can do them. I mean, a request for proposal is saying, hey, we have a need. Tell us your ideas. Here's some parameters. Tell us how you think you would do it, right? We're not being specific and saying, this is what we need. Give us a price for it. We kind of float out more of, give us your ideas. They're proposal calls. So they provide a proposal. And in that, we would also say, if we had support from the Wewakai saying, and it could be this area and it could also involve this. So if it did, what would that look like? So you tell us. Yeah.
okay, and then would we be considering? I guess one of the things that I noticed in the report is it was really focused on weekly collection. But if there was something that was like every other week, it would maybe make much more economic sense. So would those parameters
they'd have options.
Be
so,
included in something?
Yeah, so you do a proposal and then you'd say, okay, if it was this, what would it look like? If it was weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, what would those look like, right? So, yeah, there'll be a number of financial options for us to examine and then go to the community and say, is there a desire to pursue something here?
And I guess my final question is that in the report, it really identifies that strictly providing solid waste pickup may be increasing the solid waste and decreasing the diversion rates for recyclables. And it also identified that there is no incentive or financial ability for Recycle BC to provide support in that way. So is that something that we can talk to CSWM about, or is there some way to, we've already been providing, or, haulers have been providing a service which is strictly solid waste and not recycling, but now that's being identified as a possible problem.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. The term problem carries a lot of baggage with it. It is well known that where curbside recycling isn't offered, a lot of recycling ends up in the waste. So adding curbside recycling was one of the big things that helped solid waste services sort of reach their diversion goals. So it's just an unfortunate truth that when there are no other options, people are often going to throw that stuff in the waste. I believe, people on Quadra are quite conscientious, and there's a new recycling center opening up, so perhaps the issue there won't be as egregious as in some other areas that might have even less access to recycling services. That being said, CSWM does not handle recycling. They don't accept recyclables at their facility. Disposal costs for recycling are significantly more through the private sector. It's about $200 a ton versus $155 for your municipal solid waste. So having curbside recycling without the Recycle BC support is more costly per weight than that solid waste. I guess that's just one of the complexities that we'll have to navigate. Or we could include curbside recycling as one of the amenities that we would like if we were to proceed with an RFP type service or engage with the WeWiKai. There are multi-stream vehicles that can collect both, but the tipping fees for that material will be even more than the waste itself. So it's just a cost tolerance understanding and how much money we want to put into trying to meet those diversion goals.
Well, I thank you for all of this information, and pending anybody else wanting to have comments, I would like to make some motions.
After receipt. Okay, then on receipt, all those in favor? That's carried. In your motion, Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm interested in options A, C, and D. Do you, so how, should I read them all out? There's a lot of words there. Or I could give you the headings that I would like to move that we pursue a small-scale on-island collection business opportunity, that we explore a waste collection partnership model with the WeWiKai First Nation, and that we continue to advocate for a waste transfer station on Quadra Island.
Second that.
Did Director Vinesh second that? Do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll
thank
second
you.
that.
Director Vinesh seconded it. Discussion, all those in favor? And that is carried. Number 8, Outer Discovery Island Solid Waste Management Study for receipt.
Move receipt.
Movers. Second.
Discussion?
Sheena can speak to that as well.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. So as noted, this is our second Area C waste collection study. We took a slightly different approach with this for the Outer Discovery Islands, as they do not currently have any services. So the approach with the consultants was to better understand what residents of the Outer Discovery Islands are doing with their waste and understand a bit of a cost tolerance threshold that they might have if we were to implement a service. 74% of those surveyed would like to see changes, citing inconvenience as the main reason. The cost tolerance threshold was quite low at around $50 to $100 per household. This is several times below what even the minimum service we could offer might be, so that presents us with quite a dilemma. So even just to provide really minimal services, where we're looking at probably up to $100,000 a year. This is largely on transportation costs and the amount of time that it takes a barge to get to the Outer Discovery Islands. They're quite slow compared to the water taxis. And the other complexities that we face is where we might locate any sort of facilities. Perhaps they could be located just on the barge that docks at the government wharfs there, at the SRD-owned wharfs. But again, even that quite exceeds the cost tolerance threshold. So in light of that, there are a few different options that we could continue to explore. We're just looking for some direction on which ones sound the most feasible. So we could proceed with trying to get some cost to set up a service, which would be a more regular service delivery where there was garbage collected from the islands. In our interviews, I focus mostly on Surge Narrows and Owen Bay, and both communities see the need for disposal options in their communities. They're not very close together, so providing an amenity at Surge does not really help those at Owen Bay. So that doubles the cost essentially. It's not really that much cheaper to serve one than the other. So we could pursue service establishment at one or both locations, and it could be any sort of varying degree of frequency. A lot of those surveys weren't looking for, say, weekly pickup, but we're looking for a more intermediate or a surface with fewer pickups. And a lot of them did speak to wanting assistance just disposing of more hard to manage items, large item pickup, and some of those recyclable items such as electronics and the like. So there may be a way to also provide that. The CSWM does provide EPR events, which is extended producer responsibility events, where the manufacturers of those recyclable materials are required by law to support their recycling. So there is funding from these manufacturers to support those. So CSWM, we could ask them to provide events in the Discovery Islands. I've spoken to them about that, and it's something I believe that they're open to. But again, they're the ones who received that EPR funding, so it would be through them that that event would be authorized. And then we're also suggesting that a waste transfer station on Cortez would support resident managed waste disposal, sorry, not on Cortez, my apologies, on Quadra, as that would support the resident managed waste disposal where they could take their waste with more convenience. And it might also support them in developing more community-led options where perhaps they could pool their resources to take waste if it wasn't quite so onerous. So yeah, we're just looking for guidance on how best to proceed with this complex issue as well.
Dr. Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you again for the report. I will admit that the options that are offered aren't quite what I was imagining. But I'm really, I guess, or maybe the cost, you know? And I am curious about the extended producer responsibility because how, and I'm also curious about, I've seen in some places like the Sayward Valley, they have these cleanup events where somebody rolls into town with dumpsters and picks up everybody's garbage and recycling and everything all at once. And I think they do them maybe more than once a year. So how are those managed? And would that be something is that through their solid waste service for the Sayward Valley, or is that through CSWM? And how could we potentially find a project that could do the same thing for the Outer Islands, where it's even an annual thing where people can bring all or twice a year or something, where people could bring all of their different things at the same time? And it seemed like one of the major costs in the report was about staff as well as barge time. But maybe if there was only a sporadic and yet regularly scheduled event, that could solve some of those problems.
Yeah, thank you. So just to speak to the staffing costs in the report, that was more around envisioning a waste disposal area. So dumpsters or something like that, that would want to be staffed to ensure that they're being used properly and there isn't contamination and hygiene issues. Certainly with sort of these waste collection events, there's a staff component as well. In the Sayward Valley, they are fully run and managed by the CSWM. Sayward Valley Solid Waste Service pays the tipping fees for the garbage that is collected. So if a similar model were to be employed in the Outer Discovery Islands, I would see likely that the CSWM would cover the cost of those collecting those extended producer responsibility items. If there was household solid waste collected in addition to that, I believe they would probably be looking at us to cover those costs. In addition to that, I believe Main Roads, who is the Ministry of Transportation's maintenance contractor, provides their yard as the collection space for this. Perhaps the chair could confirm. I believe that's the case. So there's free land available or land that is being used for that purpose that is available. Where I'm not sure if we would have the same spatial accommodations in the Outer Discovery Islands. And then again, the complexity of there being two separate locations, if indeed we were looking to provide those events. So we can certainly advocate to CSWM that we would like to see these EPR events, and we could look at what the cost would be to include household solid waste. I guess one of the complexities there is the EPR event could happen without a service being established, so that could be something that wouldn't require that whole service establishment process. Whereas if we were then to pay the tipping fees, the corporate officer could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we would need to have a service established in order to cover those costs. So sort of two things happening at once there if you wanted to merge those services.
Okay, Director Vinesh?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering about Refuge Cove. which is very close to Cortez. I wonder if there's any information on what they're currently doing with their garbage. My understanding is that that's actually coming to Cortez, and we don't have a scale, and we're actually subsidizing that. I'm wondering if there's any comments from staff on that.
I am not aware of that, so I have no comments. Thank you.
Did Refuge Cove? Did we reach out to Refuge Cove? Like, was that part of the attempt on this report, or what was the reason for not reaching out to them?
I can't speak specifically to Refuge Cove. We sent copies of the surveys to all of the improved lots within Sonora, Reed, and parts of the other island that's in between them. Apologies to those people who live there. The name's not coming to me. If Refuge Cove is in fact an improved lot within those areas, they would have received the survey. The surveys were anonymous, so we do not know who responded. There was an opportunity for survey respondents to proceed to a second stage of interview. I saw the list, and they were not associated with neighborhoods. They were just names, so I can't speak to whether or not any of those people who took the second stage of the survey were from Refuge Cove or not.
I'm not familiar with the proximity of Refuge Cove, but let's say folks are boating their waste over to Cortez and then driving it to the transfer station. I don't think there's any mechanism to police, like, where are you from? It's not that sophisticated over there. So I would say I don't know of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if folks from non-Cortez Island, if there is a close proximity, that they could bring their waste there. And I don't know how would we police who's bringing where you're from Cortez. So I'll say there's a possibility that may be happening.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Or thank you, CAO. The Refuge Cove is on East Redondo, which is about 15 minutes on a reasonably fast boat northeast of Cortez. And we have brought this issue up with Comox Strathcona Waste Management around, renegotiating those contracts and actually having them pay for what they're using. But thanks, I appreciate the info.
Okay, on receipt. Something further, Director Mooney?
Nope, I have something after receipt.
Okay.
Move receipt.
All those in favor? All right, Director Mooney, a motion?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move to defer this item to the June Electoral Area Services Committee meeting so I can have some more time to think and talk to Outer Island residents before making a further decision.
I'll second that.
All in favor? And that is carried. Number 9, 2024 Engineering Service Initiatives and Work and Project Update.
Move receipt.
Second.
So, Mr. Chair, as promised, I think on some kind of regular basis, we'd promised to bring engineering and planning initiatives back for update on here. And I believe either Wilf or Wilf and Sheen in combination will speak to the projects specifically in the electoral areas.
Thank you.
Good morning. Through the chair and the CAO to the committee. A year ago, we introduced a report with initiatives and projects for 2023. I'm very happy just to provide an update, and I'm just going to walk you through some of these projects, initiatives, and all the work that engineering has done. If you refer to page number 3 of the report, you can see those initiatives and projects that have been completed. So very significant. It has been a lot of work, and I'm just happy to report that. The list for 2024 continues growing. We're also happy to see that. That means there's a lot of work coming here for us. These are projects that are very specific to the electoral area. So I'm going to start from electoral area A, and I'm just going to move all the way down through electoral area D. The report doesn't have any options, but I welcome your questions at the end, if you don't mind. So I'm just going to go through the first item here for electoral area E, which is related to the Cayuga water system. So where we are,
That was our emergency response. No, I know it was. No, I know. I got it too.
Thank you, Director Mawini, making my life easier here. So the first item is the Cayuga water system. So this is an item that came up after we received a letter from the province. The Cayuga Checklist First Nation, they hold a permit with Island Health, and they're not required to supply water to 3 communities, the Okimit and Walters Island, I believe the school. So we're looking at engaging with the First Nation community to look at options and see how can we collaborate as well. We have to engage an engineering firm to can help us with the study. So we plan to start the project this summer, and we're hoping to have it completed by winter 2025. Cortez Island Solid Waste Service, we introduced a staff report in the last couple of weeks, I believe, and we have to update the bylaw, and we have to come up with a user fee update. We're just waiting for Recycle BC to complete the cost study methodology and understand really well what the incentives are before we can actually go ahead with the updates. We're hoping to have that completed by spring 2025. Then we have 2 more items related to waste, commercial solid waste on Cortez. We have some jurisdiction issues, and we have communicated with the Comox Valley Regional District, Comox Strathcona Waste Management. We're still waiting to hear back from them. We have a pilot project for the waste collection at the government docks. This is kind of linked to the previous item, to the commercial solid waste, so it is on hold. We will provide an update once we hear back from them. Moving into Electoral Area C, we have the work service establishment and the upgrades. We put a request to Transport Canada to extend the contribution agreement. That is coming up. It has been, in principle, approved. We're just waiting for a document that comes from them. We're also looking at the next steps for Owen Bay and Search and Narrows. So we have had recent meetings with Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and there is more coming up, more updates. The Port Noble Wharf divestment to the Clowitzes First Nation agreement negotiation we have coming up. The agreement has been sent to the First Nation. They are reviewing it right now with the legal, and we're going to be working on the bylaw. Hopefully have the agreement once the bylaw all the readings are going through and the agreement is agreed by the Clowitzes First Nations and all get signed, we can proceed with the repairs and the divestment of the wharf. So things are moving forward with that. We have Kwatioski Cove, new wastewater treatment plant design. We have submitted in the past 4 years a couple of applications to the province looking for funding to replace the existing system. We haven't been successful. We have learned that a good way to actually increase our chances is having a concept design move into detailed design. So that's what we're doing. We're going to be working with a consultant moving this into the next stage, which is having more detailed design, have a better costing, eliminate all the risk, and we'll continue looking at options for funding opportunities. That's where we are. Feasibility study for the solid waste services. The next 2 items that were just presented by China. Thank you, China. Kwatioski Cove Water Systems Construction Estimate Update. This is a resolution was recently passed to actually take the information that we received from the groundwater study and include it in the Q Cove Water report and getting those estimates up to date. So we're working with the consultant on that, and we're hoping to have that completed by fall 2024 this year. Kwatioski Cove Extension Statutory Right-of-Way Registration. I believe that there is a registration of 4. It's in progress right now. The plan and certification has been completed, and I believe this is now with the lawyer, so it all gets, the registration gets completed. We anticipate this to be done by 2024, the latest. We have a Kwatioski Cove sewer collection system. We have some minor improvements to do. This is the best time. We were waiting for winter just to pass, and now getting to the good weather. So we're working on that to find a contractor who can help us with the repair. This is just related to the manholes. Electoral Area D, a lot of projects in this area. We have the universal water meters. So we have made improved progress with the water locates that we have collaborated with the city of Campbell River, and that exercise has been completed. That information is right now being analyzed and reviewed by the team, and we're hoping to release an RFP this summer to the water meters, and we will learn more about supply for those meters and when we're planning to install the first batch. So more on that coming up. Area D, water bulk, water contract renewal. The renewal, I think it expires the end of the year, so we're working with community service to identify future demand, and we will be working with the city of Campbell River to renew the terms and negotiate that as well. Stormwater management feasibility study, that was a request that came to us recently, so engagement with Mori started, and we anticipate that that project will be completed in 2025. The transit exchange upgrades at Oyster Bay, we recently learned that funding has been granted, and this has been collaboration with a lot of government agencies like BC Transit, CBRD, Mori. A month ago, we had a meeting with the entire team, and we're in the planning stages. We're a stakeholder. We're going to be invited to all of those meetings, and they already engaged a consultant to design this project. So more on that in subsequent steering committee meetings, so we will provide more updates on that. Traffic study for Highway 19A. We have listened to your concerns, Director Rice, and all those have been passed to the Ministry of Transportation. We continue following up with them on updates and making sure that your concerns are considered in that and with stakeholders in the process. Transportation Master Services Agreement. This is something that has been on the list, but we haven't done much. Unfortunately, we're planning to attack this summer 2024. We need to negotiate a new transit service agreement incorporating the bus shelter maintenance, now with the new shelters that got recently installed, which is in page 3. Area D, Water Systems Integration Study. It's a feasibility study that has been asked. We're looking into this. I don't have any updates so far, but it's coming. Oyster River Bank inspection and inspection of historic bank stabilization measures in collaboration with Community Service Floodplain Mapping Project. This is subject to the RFP results and to funding. We have a water main replacement project that has been sitting there for quite a while. We have, in our opinion, insufficient funds. We don't have enough to actually go and start replacing pipes, so we have to wait until we find more funding for that before we can do anything. And we're also waiting for the water metering project to be completed to understand more what the problems are. So I think that's going to help us a lot. We have some water pressure improvements, also insufficient funds. There was a study that was developed by McElhaney back a few years ago, and the study, that has to be updated, just especially the costing, and we don't have enough funding right now to proceed with that. Area D, street lighting service. Review lighting along the Glenmore. China has done an analysis. I do understand there are a few lights that are not included in the service, but the residents are paying for, something that we have to sort out, and I believe that you have a request to install additional lighting. So it's there for us just to work on, and that's what I have in terms of the updates. Again, if you go to page 3, you can see a lot of the things that we have accomplished. And there are other projects that we're working on. This is not the only thing that engineering is doing. We have more projects that we will report to the board that is more regional. I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Anything from directors? Director Vanesh. Director Vanesh.
Here. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Wolfgang. Really appreciate the update. This is, it's really useful just to see everything that you're working on and be able to report back on this to our constituents. I just had a question about the pilot for the waste collection at government docks that's on hold. I don't understand why it's part of the bylaws and rates update, and it's on hold because of that. My understanding, and some background is this was a service that was offered by the Harbor Authority of Cortez Island for many years, and then up until a few years ago, they canceled that service. And my suggestion for a solution was to sit down with Hakai, have them get it running again, have a collection box that would pay for a lot of it by the users, which is often boaters, and then have that supplemented through our service agreement with the company that does the pickup on Cortez. It is a big issue, so I am concerned that it's on hold, so would love some further insight there. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chair.
That was a question.
Is that a question? Okay, thank you. So China will
Yes,
speak about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to Director Von Esch through the chair. The reason why it's linked in is because the government docks was one of those commercial customers who was paying a rate that was set decades ago. So the fact that they're, one, not offering the service and that there's no way to cover the cost of the waste that is collected at their dock because that bylaw is outdated and again, they've opted out, is why we see them as being linked. I guess we could try to facilitate some conversations with the Hakai. I think some of the complexity is that our bylaw is for residential waste construction and then overlaid with that commercial rates bylaw. So our current bylaws don't necessarily incorporate collection of public waste at a commercial facility. So that's sort of where the jurisdictional complexities come in to play.
Anyone else? Director Rice?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Just a couple of comments that I had is with regards to the transit exchange upgrades, there was recently a survey that was put out that wasn't really well advertised by the City of Campbell River. Thank goodness I caught it because it did relate to the bus service and a lot of questions were related to Area D. So again, I'm hoping that when you start looking at the possible upgrades that survey could be brought in and you'll get a copy of it. So that was my first comment. Second comment is that on the water system integration study, are you aware of the Saratoga 400?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so I've been sitting in on some of those meetings. So just south of the Oyster River, there is a proposal that is going through the Comox Valley right now for the potential of 544 homes. That would essentially use up pretty much the capacity of the new well that was just drilled on Shelter Point Farms. Area D contributes to that. So what I'm hoping is that we can move quickly on that particular study because, again, it would be nice to have options. You know, I don't know where Area D is going to be in terms of the south end and what will be available for water. There seems to be the push on the other side of the river, so south. So that's something that's quite important. With respects to the water main, or sorry, the water pressure improvements, one thing that has come up is that there is an issue with a water main that I believe connects to Gimpsey. It was identified by the developer that was seeking to extend the urban boundary containment. And I'm wondering, would that help solve some of the pressure issues? Because it's creating pressure issues for the developer on that other side. So, I mean, I'm happy to bring a motion to ask Campbell River on that, but it would be nice to see when their own staff identify that as a replacement that should be done sooner than later. Well, why isn't it getting done? So just comments.
Director Maroney?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for this report. It's really nice to see all the things that are obviously so many of them for you guys to be having to focus on at once. I had a couple of questions. One of them is there's a line item there that says Q Cove Extension Statutory Right of Way. Is that for the sewer?
That is correct. That's for the project that was approved back in 2018, and there were some statutory right-of-ways that needed to be registered. So we're just catching up from trying to make sure that that's completed.
Oh, so is the sewer already working, but just the paperwork hasn't been completed? Is that the way that I should understand that?
Yeah, the project got completed probably back in 2020, and we're just like catching up, trying to just get that statutory right-of-ways in place.
Okay, and is it the statutory right-of-way that you're working on, is it strictly for the sewer, or will it have a public access component? Or, I guess I'm asking because we've had that challenge with other
sewer right-of-ways that then we've tried to build a path on?
Perhaps I could answer that.
Oh, great.
These are statutory right-of-ways that the property owners agreed to at the time the sewer extension was being done, specifically for the sewer line. And typically, we're talking about a very minor encroachment onto their private land off of the public road. So we're not talking about huge swaths of property. They're typically to take care of encroachments that the sewer line has placed upon their private land.
So if I can add something to that, Mr. Chair, so when you negotiating rights away with, let's say, private property owners, they're savvy to, at times, how many layers you put onto that. So what ultimately, when we get a right of way, we'd like to have public access and, get 2, 3, 4 things that we can do on top of that. But that's a negotiation between us and the property owner. And let's say for these, they don't want a public pathway going on top of it. It's just for the sewer. So they're not all the same. But if we can, we ultimately like to have right-of-ways that we can use for other accesses.
Okay, so that's not included, it's strictly for sewer, okay. Thank you. And then the other question that I had was just, I noticed that in the 2023 report, there were items about Connected Coast and Just Like Home, and also the engineering department's involvement in the solid waste management plan. So I'm assuming that engineering is still involved in these projects. In particular, I'm curious if it's possible to get an update on Connected Coast, or if that will be coming to the board.
Yeah, it'll be coming to the board, yeah. So we just wanted this to focus on the electoral areas, and then regional things will update the board.
Okay, so will that be coming in the May meeting?
Not May, but it will be coming up, I'm going to say a couple months. For Connected Coast,
Okay,
couple months.
okay. Thanks.
On receipt, all those in favor? That's carried. Item number 10, 2024 Planning and Parks Initiatives and Project Update for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I think Aniko will do the same for Planning and Parks, and Meredith.
Thank you, through the chair, to the committee. Our report is a little less fulsome than engineering's, only because we have reported back to both committee and board since this initial report was provided back in May 2023. So there was a request of the Electoral Area Services Committee. I think the motion was put forward by Director Wally for us to give a planning update, which was done back in December with a long list of all of the projects that we had accomplished in 2023. And as part of the financial planning process, we did a presentation on all parks planning and other community services initiatives. So you will not see a long list of completed projects on this report because we have already provided that. We've broken up our update with planning and parks and separated those planning projects to long-range projects and some other projects that we're currently working on. So you'll see we have a large list of items that will be coming forward to the Electoral Area Services Committee and Board between now and June. Most of those are bylaw updates related to legislative requirements and recent changes with Bill 44. We've got the noise bylaw, which you contemplated today, the housing legislation updates, which are coming up next, water bottling, which will be coming back here in June after some further legal consultation, the poverty reduction plan, which will be coming back once it's finalized in June. We've got a motion for considerations for tiny homes or small homes, accessory dwelling unit considerations. That will be coming forward in June. A report back on the recent DCC and ACC policies and considerations that the committee might want to look at with respect to implementing those, hoping to have that brought back to you in July.
We've got the update to the planning and procedures bylaw. July might be a little bit ambitious, but we'll leave it there for the time being. We've got the short-term rental legislation zoning updates, which we hope to bring back sometime probably in August, just looking at the work that needs to be done on that, and still some questions that we have to seek on that. And we have confirmed that we will be required to do a public hearing for those changes to the zoning bylaws with respect to short-term rentals. So that will be coming forward. With respect to the new legislation for short-term rentals, also those considerations for business licenses, and whether or not that's something that there is an appetite for in the electoral areas, specifically likely those that have opted in. We're getting some updated information that will probably factor in your considerations for business licensing for short-term rentals. So that will be brought forward to you in August. This information is coming on almost a weekly basis. So we have our land use software replacement, which we are in the midst of, I guess I'd call it a test phase, and hoping to have that implemented by the end of the summer. So that will assist us with all of our land use applications for planning and building and bylaw enforcement. We have the Cortez Island zoning bylaw review, which is currently in process. We've done some consultations, some surveys. We're now currently looking at the actual draft bylaw language to provide some draft for further discussion with the community. So further consultation will happen with the community. And if that goes well, we could potentially see something coming back to the committee in October. As required again by the provincial legislation, we are required to do housing needs report interim updates. So we're going to be seeking a consultant to assist us with that sometime within the next month or so, and have that done prior to the end of this year. We have the Area C Master Transportation Plan, which again, we're needing to seek assistance on that with respect to a consultant. So we're actively considering, putting that out to the consulting world and see what we get back on that, and potentially tying in some of the active transportation planning with that more fulsome master transportation plan. So again, that will be probably a year out. The Area C OCP, we're hoping to pick that up here in September once the busyness of this summer is over, and again, that's likely going to be a year-long process, if not more, again, depending on how well the community consultation goes. And a floodplain management bylaw review, we are waiting for the updated floodplain mapping that we are getting through a grant to help inform that bylaw, and then make the necessary changes to that and bring that forward to the board, likely at the probably again, at least a year out. Does anyone want to discuss planning before we move into parks?
Got a comment, Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. You just were mentioning a couple of things that raised some questions for me. One of those was around the poverty reduction plan. Will that plan be coming to the Electoral Area Services Committee before it goes to the board?
Yes. What the timeline on that is?
June 6th is when we...
Probably July.
Oh, it'll be coming to the July Electoral Area Committee meeting. Great, okay, thank you for that. And then, sorry.
It may be June East.
Oh, okay. And then something else that you mentioned was that you're receiving weekly information on the business license considerations for short-term rentals. Is there a provincial source of this information that I could access? I've subscribed to the short-term rental page with the province, but I haven't been noticing that there's been updates, so I'm just trying to keep up on this stuff.
Yeah, the information that we're getting is I would say direct information to local governments, just with respect to how that legislation is going to feed into our process. So it's not the information that we're currently receiving is not found generically online at this point.
Okay, all right.
And but you're feeling like, because I felt like when we had talked about that earlier, maybe there hadn't been a lot of interest from EASC directors to be considering a business license service, but is it something that you're thinking that we may want to consider with new information?
So thank you for clarity. We have always indicated that we will be bringing back a report outlining the business licensing opportunities for EASC's consideration. So that report will be brought forward regardless, and that was always the plan. What I'm saying is that it's a good thing that we have yet to bring a report forward because there's new information that will, I think, make the conversation a little more it'll inform the consideration, I think, in more detail, and how business licensing may or may not assist with regulating the short-term rentals and ensuring that they're meeting the requirements that the committee or the EAs have bought into, primarily with the principal residence requirement. So, but that will be outlined in the report.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Sneak peek. Thank you. And I'm curious about the Area C Master Transportation Plan. I don't think I totally understand the goals of the plan, and I was wondering if you could share that with me. And that in the budget or the financial plan, it actually shows that that was a completed item in 2023. But now, so maybe there's my misunderstanding in some way.
I'll let Meredith speak to what the master transportation plan, what the goal of that is. I'm not sure why the financial plan indicates that that project has been completed because we have yet to start it. So I'm not sure, sorry.
Thank you through the chair. And not much to add on that because as Aniko indicated, it's not a project that's been started. It was a request from this board as part of the financial plan. So it is in the financial plan. We have budget for it, but the project hasn't been scoped or initiated. So we know that it needs to not duplicate the work that we're already also doing through the OCP, the Parks Master Plan, and the Area C Active Transportation Network Plan. So it will align and support all of those pieces, but what the actual objective and scope of that is to be determined.
Okay.
I do have one more question.
Okay, let's move along quickly. We've got half an hour left.
Okay, well, I'm just curious about the official community plan for Area C because the timeline shows that the project is beginning in September 2024. In early 2023, it was estimated to begin in fall 2023, and then it was moved to spring 2024, and now it's saying fall 2024. So I'm just curious if that's more like a firm start date, because I have already shared the wrong date with my constituents.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. This is our best guess scenario. Unfortunately, we are finding ourselves inundated with a number of requests that are coming through the EAs and the board, which is part of the presentation that was provided to you in December. There was over a page of planning items that came out specifically of requests from the Electoral Area Services Committee and the board, which overlay on top of our long-range planning processes that we currently have in our schedule. So every time we are addressing new items that are coming through EASC and board, unfortunately, we no longer have the capacity to continue working on these long-range projects. So that's why you continue to see them being bumped down. Our best guess scenario and our hope is that we begin those processes all together sometime between, late summer and early fall of next year. As Meredith indicated, we would like these processes to kind of go hand in hand so that we're not duplicating work. But I would not hold, us to that firm date, but that is our hope.
Okey dokey, on receipt. All those in favor? Oh, You're voting? Right. All those in favor?
I said yes.
Oh, thank you. I was looking for Director Vanessa. Okay, that's carried.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a word of advice. We've apparently lost internet service, so we won't be able to show the agenda through the Teams until we have that recovered.
Okay, and how can Director Vanesh hear? Because he just texted me to say that his video and audio cut out.
I'll leave that for IT to figure out, but there are ways.
Okay.
So we lost internet here.
Yes.
So I cut you off a bit there, Aniko, but I figured we were getting short on time and we've all got the written report anyway. If I could just make
fine,
one
thank you.
little comment there maybe on Area A in Cayucit and the building and so on. There was some talk in the past that maybe First Nations might be interested in kind of a joint venture there. And I just want to emphasize that before we even make a discussion with the Cayucit people on that, we want to make sure that's the intent of the citizens of Walters Island. They may want to do this on their own, so we need to discuss it with them first. Okay, moving right along. Yes? You want to discuss some things on the planning and parks?
Well, I have are we gonna maybe, like Director Vanesh isn't able to hear or ask questions and we've only done the,
He just texted me his questions on the bylaw coming up next. Do we have the phone, can he phone in on the conference call? Or can he just give us a second? 'Cause
Okay.
We have old school conference dial in here, so.
Did you, Director Mooney, have some questions you wanted on the parks part or not?
I have a couple more questions.
I wonder if we just go through the rest of the bylaws so we don't run out of time and then